How splendid our world is. When your body is young, healthy, and beautiful. But, we say, time flies. Indeed, time inevitably slips away from us. And we do not notice how words that once had no importance suddenly acquire a discomforting significance. And so, with the first beat of our heart, a new life ultimately begins. And together with it, a countdown.
The process of aging in the body begins from the age of 20. The point where the fall line intersects with this horizontal line is the date of your death.
But why do some people leave this life too early, while others live for more than 100 years?
Located on planet Earth, there exist these special zones, which we refer to as blue zones. These blue zones represent locations where people live seriously longer than the average.
But does living a long life depend on the place where we live? Or on ourselves? Can we, ourselves, extend our years by changing our lives?
Our life consists of the things we fill it with. That includes love, friendship, travel, creativity, self-knowledge, caring for loved ones.
It turns out that the code of youth is sewn into us from birth. It's this code that causes the first heart contraction in the embryos of humans. And its name is serotonin.
Serotonin is similar to the chief conductor in an orchestra.
Yes, the one that we're accustomed to calling the hormone of joy. But, of course, let's not go repeating, for the 1000th time, that all diseases are caused by the nerves. The duties of serotonin are far more wide-stretching than simply acting as a means to enhance a person's mood. So, the question arises: is it possible for us as humans to prolong our life and improve its quality? If we simply adhere to a healthy lifestyle? If we aim for a positive mindset? Can we obtain the substance necessary for us to live a long life from our diet? Or, on the contrary, is the serotonin, which currently enters the body by natural means, an insufficient amount?
The fundamental function of the medicine. This is to inevitably restore the body's ability to engage in the manufacture of its own serotonin.
In recent years, we often hear the phrase, "the world will never be the same again." And that truly is the case. The duration of our life is affected not only by the way in which we live, what fluids we drink, or the food which we consume, but also by external factors, which are changing on a constant basis. Two such instances are the level of healthcare and the COVID-19 pandemic. Nowadays, we understand that it is not enough simply to eliminate the symptoms of a disease. Viruses are becoming more intelligent. They find all the more subtle ways to act. The influence they render on our body is becoming stronger and lasting for longer periods. That being said, together with new difficulties, arise new solutions to combat them. And with that in mind, let's look to a future where you will still be young, healthy, and active. The life of a human being is dependent entirely on a particular rhythm of contraction, relaxation. Contraction, relaxation. And this rhythm provides us with serotonin. And without the aid of serotonin, this rhythm would be impossible. As a rule of thumb, after the age of 40, the level of serotonin in the blood of the human body gradually begins to decrease. Consequently, the risk of premature aging in the cells of the body increases step by step. Despite this, progressive medicine has already begun to offer us technologies which have the capability to prolong the youth of a human being.
Aging. This is the very manifestation of a reduction in the amount of energy produced inside the body's mitochondria.
Mitochondria. These are small, intracellular organelles, acting as miniature energy stations, and a huge quantity of them is housed inside the human body. The approximate number of mitochondria in each cell of the body totals approximately 2,000.
If, let's say, the electricity went out now, what we're filming here would undoubtedly stop, and we would all end up feeling our way out of this room. Basically, the same applies with mitochondria. If they stop, clinical death will occur in 5 minutes. Biological death will occur in 6 or 7 minutes. The task I've been given is perfectly simple. I need to show that serotonin, This represents another opportunity to aid our mitochondria in producing a large amount of energy. And this concept applies to any age.
In the middle of the 19th century, a scientist by the name of Carl Ludwig discovered a certain previously unknown substance present in the blood, one which constricts blood vessels. In the year 1935, the Italian pharmacologist Vittorio Erspammere noted the first recording of a substance named enteramine, which was present in the gastrointestinal mucosa. It was deemed to cause the contraction of smooth muscle. 13 years later, in the year 1948, a group under the leadership of the scientist Maurice Rapport discovered a vasoconstrictor in the blood serum. They give it the name serotonin. But several years on, in 1952, the group of scientists proved that enteramine and serotonin are actually one and the same substance. A year later, in 1953, Irving Page recorded the discovery of serotonin in the brain. This was proof that serotonin was present not only in the hormonal system, but also in the nervous system. Decades after, in the year 1991, a group of Russian scientists under the leadership of Alexey Pavlovich Semyonenkov made the discovery of serotonin deficiency syndrome. In doing so, they had defined a new direction in medicine. In the present day, research into serotonin has now resumed, and it has yielded staggering results. In the period 2020 to 2021, it was shown that regarding patient rehabilitation, administering serotonin has a tremendous effect on people who are undergoing recovery from the coronavirus. This relates both to the regulation of the cognitive emotional sphere, as well as to the restoration of internal organs, which have been weakened by the virus. Last year, in 2021, under the leadership of Denis Ivanov, a regimen was developed concerning the application of serotonin adiponate in the complex treatment of the virus. And on the eve of 2022, right in front of our very eyes, there is a group of scientists and practicing physicians, captained by Alexander Kopienko, who are conducting an experiment that will show that a new era has dawned in the treatment and prevention of diseases. It is serotonin in particular that will play one of the key roles in how human beings live their lives, and ultimately, how long they live them for. But to start with, let's figure out what serotonin exactly is responsible for, and where does it even come from in our body? As we already know from the life story of serotonin, which spans over a century and a half, it acts in two capacities. The first is as a tissue hormone. It is responsible for vascular tone and a multitude of other functions vital to humans. Secondly, it acts as a neurotransmitter located in our nervous system. Here, it exerts a lot of effort to maintain the body's fighting spirit, as well as ensure a good mood. Acting as a tissue hormone, serotonin operates to ensure the process of peristalsis in the intestines, and assists in the function of the liver. It normalizes the work of the cardiovascular system, aids in the healing of the walls of blood vessels. It produces a positive effect on the endocrine system, improves the activity of organs located in the urogenital system. It organizes uterine contractions during childbirth, and contributes to the improvement of respiratory function.
Serotonin, by its nature, is closer to a tissue hormone, of course, because it is released by cells that are not explicitly assembled into those such glands. First of all, these cells in the intestinal wall, they are called enterochromaffin cells. And basically, they represent the main source of the serotonin in our body. Our intestine is big, after all, it's rather large, totaling over 10 meters of numerous different tubes. It includes the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. In addition, you have the liver and the pancreas. Simply put, this is a huge system, and the structure of the intestinal wall is very complex in its composition. And it has, for example, its own nervous system. With the help of this nervous system, let's say, the second meter of the small intestine sends a message to the third. I already have food, let's get ready. Soon it will be necessary for us to secrete digestive juices and absorb everything. And it's these same enterochromaffin cells that secrete serotonin. They join the neural network that operates in the thin walls of the intestine, and they primarily aid in peristalsis. In other words, they help the intestine to contract.
The hormone system is older and therefore operates at a slower pace. The nervous system, this represents a leap in evolution. The difference between them is like comparing an old computer, the type which you used to use at school, and the most cutting-edge model of smartphone. But it doesn't end there.
If we take a look at the regulation of our body's activity, we can identify two of the most obvious points. These are the regulation of the nerves and hormones. So, nerve regulation is provided by nerve cells. They have long, thin sprouts that stretch out to other nerve cells, as well as to the intestines, to the heart, and to our muscles. And when the sprout reaches a certain target, we call it the cell target, then a special contact appears there. We refer to this contact as a synapse. And in this synapse, a chemical substance is released very precisely, which affects something. This is a neurotransmitter. In addition, this effect develops very quickly. Let's say, for instance, you are walking down the street, and you hear a firecracker explode somewhere. Your heart instantly begins to beat at a faster rate. Nerve impulses spread and noradrenaline is released in the body. This affects your heart rate, and everything happens in a second. The hormonal system is, in some sense, older. You can imagine for yourself that there is a group of cells, and it releases molecules into the blood, or sometimes, the intercellular environment as a whole. And these molecules slowly swim to other cells, where they influence them, and all these effects, firstly, occur at a slower pace. And secondly, they are more greatly distributed over this particular space.
As a neurotransmitter, serotonin not only elevates a person's mood, but also imbues them with greater self-confidence.
A successful person. This is a person who manages to find self-realization in life, who achieves some form of career ambitions. Maybe they build their own business, or construct a happy and long-lasting life with their family and loved ones. Naturally, all of this potential success is impossible when there's an underlying condition of reduced serotonin levels in the body. This is because a lack of serotonin entails depression, despondency, and unwillingness to do anything. This applies even more so when taking into account that serotonin affects brain function. If we basically say that the IQ potential of a human also depends on serotonin. Therefore, take a look at successful people in our society. These are people who possess a fairly high level of intelligence. They have a sufficiently stable level of emotional balance. Successful people, they are active in life. And, of course, as a result, people follow in their footsteps by emulating the behavior of these activists in life. They create empires, they establish corporations.
But the functions of serotonin are not limited to this. In addition to suppressing the activity of the centers of negative emotions and imbuing humans with self-confidence, serotonin also performs the following actions. It regulates sleep, assists in pain reduction, possesses an antidepressant effect. It helps us to concentrate.
There is also immune regulation, because the immune system releases special substances. They are called cytokines, and they also affect the whole body. Since immunology is currently experiencing a wave of success thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, interest in the immune system is increasing at a dramatic rate. It has turned out to be quite complex, and it is no less complex than the brain. And this immune regulation is as complex as the regulatory procedures performed in the endocrine and nervous system. Thus there appears this three-pronged regulatory influence on every serious process. This trinity of regulation provided by the nervous, endocrine and immune systems. This is a modern physiological and medical approach to the various problems of the human body and the human psyche.
A lack of serotonin can not only induce disorders associated with depression, but also have an impact on the general condition of the entire human body. Because of this, serotonin acts like a key. Today, without this key, it would be impossible to delve into the progressive science relating to the health of a human being on a physical and psychological level. And this is what directly has an impact on the length of our lives.
One of the essential amino acids in our body is called tryptophan. There exists a well-defined, not very long chain of chemical reactions. Tryptophan is converted to 5-hydroxytryptophan, and 5-hydroxytryptophan then to 5-hydroxytryptamine. And this 5-hydroxytryptamine is known in layman's terms as serotonin. Therefore, serotonin is the serum and tone of the blood. And so, consequently, this is how the word originated.
The path of serotonin. Tryptophan, a dietary amino acid, enters our body, together with food. Tryptophan is then converted to 5-hydroxytryptophan. It is branded as 5-HTP. Then, from the 5-hydroxytryptophan, something called 5-hydroxytryptamine is synthesized, which is nicknamed 5-HT. This is serotonin. The synthesis of serotonin occurs at the presynaptic terminal of the serotonin neurons. These neurons form as branches, which a nerve impulse travels through, in an attempt to migrate from one cell to another. The serotonin is loaded into a vesicle, which is a special type of bubble. It is then released into the synaptic cleft. This represents the area between the transmitting neuron and the receiving neuron. From this point, the serotonin has an impact on the postsynaptic receptors, which are the receptors of the receiving neuron. This is how the signal is transmitted. Any unrequired serotonin, which is left unclaimed by the receiving receptors, remains in the synaptic cleft and is directed back to its original source. A portion of the serotonin is inhibited by serotonin receptors, which are located at the presynaptic terminal. This remainder prevents the levels of serotonin from exhausting. In addition, part of the serotonin is returned to the presynaptic terminal. This is achieved by means of a special protein pump, which is operated via a reuptake mechanism. After it has been reabsorbed, the serotonin is either loaded once again into the vesicle, or it is broken down with the aid of a special enzyme, which is known as monoamine oxidase. Meanwhile, in the periphery, a large portion of serotonin is manufactured outside the bounds of the central nervous system. Serotonin accumulates in platelets. Platelets are small fragments of cells housed inside red bone marrow. The fundamental task performed by platelets is to respond to any damage to vessels. And in case of an accident, the platelets are to launch the processes of thrombosis. This is when they literally fill the hole with their own bodies. At the same time, serotonin is released into the blood. When released from the platelets, the serotonin contracts blood vessels and helps to plug a hole in the wall breach. In the event of mechanical injury, serotonin compresses the blood vessels. It achieves this by increasing the tension of smooth muscle fibers.
The blood coagulation system is a separate, very complex unit in our body, which actually solves a very complicated task. This is because, on one hand, it needs to plug the hole in the vessel as quickly as possible. On the other hand, the system needs to ensure that the clot doesn't interfere with regular blood flow, so that it does not end up elsewhere, in a random place. A blood clot in a random place is already known as a stroke, and that is very bad. Due to this, platelets, despite their apparent simplicity, are equipped with a whole arsenal of different signaling molecules. And they need serotonin as well.
Platelets that didn't prove to be of necessity in repairing blood vessels are destroyed after a couple of weeks of free swimming in the blood. Also, serotonin is released into the bloodstream. Because of these factors, we always have some basic level of serotonin present in our blood. Serotonin syndrome is a rare disease. As a rule, it is described as the consequence resulting from the simultaneous use of two types of antidepressants. When suffering from serotonin syndrome, people may experience a large array of side effects, such as headaches, pain, and an upset stomach. Sometimes, feelings of anxiety and a muddled consciousness occur. Serotonin syndrome may cause a violation of movement coordination, as well as an increase in temperature and arterial blood pressure. It can also lead to tachycardia, myoclonic convulsions, and a whole host of other unpleasant symptoms. Have you noticed the strange factor here? We have spoken about how serotonin reduces pain sensitivity. But why then, when there is an excess of it in the body, does it cause so much pain?
One of the functions of serotonin is to control background pain sensitivity. This means that, if your serotonin system is actively working throughout life, then, yes, you are consequently less sensitive to pain. So, your pain threshold is higher. But if not, then you have a low pain threshold. Someone goes to the dentist and is not afraid, while for someone else, giving blood from their finger for analysis is already a personal tragedy.
However, if an excess amount of serotonin is considered an extremely rare or localized phenomenon, then a lack of it in the body can lead to effects on an almost massive scale.
If our body receives an insufficient quantity of certain proteins, our synthesis of serotonin is disrupted. As a result, we find ourselves in a bad mood, we have no desire to do anything, we do not want to work in any way, and a whole bunch of diseases consequently arise from this.
It can lead to the dysfunction of smooth muscle, a deterioration in internal organ nourishment, difficulty concerning the excretion of waste products from the body, diseases associated with the cardiovascular system, disorders linked to blood circulation in the brain, a deceleration in cell metabolism, diseases associated with the gastrointestinal tract, and disorders linked to digestion processes. What exactly has an impact on the level of serotonin in the body? And how can we properly regulate it to avoid any dangerous or undesirable consequences? As we are already aware, serotonin is produced from tryptophan. This is an essential amino acid. That means that our body cannot synthesize the acid independently. However, it can have an impact on the activity which is performed in serotonin synapses. You can support yourself by establishing a personal regime to engage in meditation practices on a daily basis. In addition, you can avoid stressful situations and allow yourself walks in the wide outdoors, as well as pamper yourself with relaxing treatments.
On the whole, happiness is built into our basic package, but at the same time, a huge number of people live in a state of underlying depression. The question arises, why do they do this? It's because happiness is not a state, happiness is an action. It's an action that we can direct towards ourselves. Our life consists of all the things which we fill it with. These range from love, friendship, traveling and creativity, to self-knowledge, caring for loved ones. Yes, it is evident that there are situations in which our access to the joys of these areas has been blocked, and then we need to contact specialists and take a course of medication. But most often, ordinary emotional hygiene helps.
Calmness, contentment, clarity of thought. These are all skills that we as human beings can enhance and develop. And if you want to maintain an accurate track of your results, biofeedback technologies have been developed, which will aid you in this endeavor. Moreover, they garnered popularity quite recently. However, the Secret Services actually conducted experiments based on refined studies into the brain, back in the times of the USSR.
There was one system which we had situated in the south, in Krasnodar. It was an apparatus that measured the brain. Imagine that you are putting on this, somewhat of a helmet. You have a large number of electrodes attached to your skull, and each electrode occupies a certain area on the human skull. And this system captures a lot of characteristics of the human brain. Now, in fact, it turns out this combination of such experiments and studies gave super objective information.
Nowadays, similar research tools have become widely available to the public. For example, the NeuroHoop. This is a light headband that is placed on the head. There are sensors fitted into this headband, and they record the electrical activity which occurs in the brain. By synchronizing the NeuroHoop, for instance, with a smartphone or a tablet, you will be able to acquire a visual image of the world housed inside you. The NeuroHoop has yet to master how to read a human's thoughts. However, it is perfectly capable of showing what emotional state you are in at the present moment. If you are excited or irritated, it will display a hurricane raging on the screen. On the contrary, if you are in a relaxed and pacified state, the screen will project a clear sky and the chirping of birds. By conducting this procedure, you teach your brain to remain in a calm state. This will be maintained even when you encounter a stressful situation. Currently, in addition to emotional hygiene, it is worth noting the necessity to protect ourselves from the aggressive information flow associated with COVID-19. We are in a unique time, the time of a pandemic. But don't forget, panic is far from the most adequate companion to your health. It is important to trust the scientific information provided, to take precautions, to boost your immune system, and not to fall into an abyss of anxiety.
The kind of stress we are under, it constantly consumes serotonin. Let's assume that we have already established our eating behavior. We are accustomed to eating certain foods, and the tryptophan, the essential amino acid that came to us through our diet, was a sufficient amount for us to produce the required level of serotonin for our body. However, what if serotonin consumption has increased due to our state of fear, because we're worried? Will I get the disease or not? Does a temperature mean I have COVID, or maybe it's not COVID? I've coughed once. Is this COVID or not COVID? But what will happen? How do you treat it? All of these thoughts weigh down and dominate us. And we consume more and more of our serotonin. We do not restore it. And of course, in order to get out of this vicious circle, we need serotonin. It is necessary as a form of prevention.
One of the most widespread myths. This is that tryptophan, the precursor to serotonin, can be obtained most of all from bananas and dark chocolate. In actual fact, it is contained in all foods with a rich protein content. Foods rich in tryptophan: fish and seafood, meat and poultry, cheese and cottage cheese, nuts and seeds, soy and legumes. Modern culinary physics. This takes into account the importance of not only taste, but also what processes are initiated by the consumption of any given product. Would you like to know how much tryptophan would be necessary for you to consume per day in order to synthesize enough serotonin from it? Let's figure it out right now.
In order for the serotonin system to work properly, we must consume at least a gram of protein per kilogram of body weight on a daily basis. It is better to eat 1.2 to 1.3 grams. And better yet for at least half of the proteins we consume to have originated from animals. It's not too important whether it's meat, fish, egg, milk, cottage cheese, cheese. What is important is that these are protein molecules that are from animals.
It is also important not to forget about physical activity and maintaining a drinking regime.
The main thing is to devote time to this. It's necessary to allocate at least 2 to 3 times a week, at least 30 minutes each time. In people who spend a lot of time at the computer, the load on the spine increases. This is particularly targeted to the neck. And by the way, there is such a concept nowadays as a techno neck. A technological neck. This is when a person lowers his head, and consequently, the load on the spine increases 2 or 3 times. This leads to a vasospasm, resulting in vessels transporting blood to the head in an ineffective manner. Due to this, the outflow of blood and lymphatic outflow are hindered. Therefore, a complaint which is very often heard among 25 to 30-year-old girls. They have an issue with their chin. I have a second chin. But this is nothing more than an accumulation of lymph tissue. In other words, tissue congestion. Therefore, we recommend that you always follow the correct drinking regime. This is paramount, because if the body does not receive enough, what happens? It begins to send all the water that is located in the body to those organs that are considered vital to the survival of a human being. These vital organs constitute the lungs, as gas exchange takes place there. The heart, because the heart needs to pump blood easily so that it isn't thick. When we drink water, it is easy for the heart. Next there is the liver. This is the organ of detoxification, where all the processes of neutralization take place. The kidneys, and the body has no concern whatsoever for the skin, hair, nails, and joints. In other words, these organs are already considered peripheral, and the following principle operates. If something remains, I will give it to you. Therefore, movement is life, it always has been, everywhere, and I wasn't the one to say this. The drinking regime is quite active, with the right approach to drinking, for a reason. For example, we have to drink water an hour before a meal, half an hour before, and at least an hour later. Be sure to drink water in the morning on an empty stomach.
In the present day, cutting-edge technologies allow us to take an even deeper look into the issues associated with nutrition and sports. And with a simple test, we can learn a lot about ourselves right this instant.
Each of us, literally right this second, while we're watching a film, can conduct a self-diagnosis. It's a very simple procedure. What you need to do is sit down, relax, take a deep breath, and exhale. Then, take a breath and hold it, and at the same time, turn on the stopwatch to time yourself. The goal is to remain for as long as possible without breathing, without taking another breath. And now, we need to evaluate the results. How can you do that? If you performed such a test, and you held your breath for 1.5 minutes or more, then I can confidently say, as a person who conducts studies into mitochondrial health, you can be awarded the highest mark. But if you held your breath for less than a minute, then this already indicates that your body has serious difficulties, and it should be considered a reason to think about what is happening inside your mitochondria. As a matter of fact, during our experiment, when we stopped breathing, we temporarily disabled the supply of oxygen to the mitochondria in our body. In turn, the mitochondria stopped the production of energy molecules called adenosine triphosphate. We refer to these molecules as ATP. The cells in the body that have stopped receiving ATP, because their mitochondria have also been disabled. These are the first cells to react by sending out a signal. It's vital for you to take another breath. If you don't, we will die. And so, basically, this is the simplest thing any person can do right now. And to obtain a greater comprehension of what stage they are currently at with regards to their path in life, and the life of their mitochondria.
Tryptophan can also be consumed directly in tablets. It is not considered as a type of drug, but is rated as a biologically active food supplement.
We eat roughly 1 gram of tryptophan with our usual proteins every day. If you decide to support yourself with tryptophan using tablets, then, as a rule, doctors recommend you consume no more than a daily dose. Or even half of that amount, meaning, half a gram to a gram. There are people who take half a gram of tryptophan, let's say, when they are stressed, or before sleep, and this is a perfectly sufficient amount for them. And some say, nope, a gram does not help me. Because, in fact, we also have enzymes that break down excess tryptophan. But in any case, you have a unique body, a unique brain, so give it a try and listen to them. Even if it proves to be a placebo effect, it will be better than nothing. Personally, I do not take tryptophan, but I believe that, at least for the time being, I can get by with the aid of my own resources. My resources consist of the following: a more or less decent sleep, a healthy diet, and taking at least some walks in the sun. This is because sunlight really enhances the formation of serotonin, and that is fantastic.
Another drug, which is popular among people who want to easily increase their serotonin levels, is 5-hydroxytryptophan. There is no unanimous point of view regarding the substance, because the consequences of its consumption can be unexpected.
It is written for you in the instructions to the medicine. Proceed with caution, these are the potential side effects, and so on. Well, sometimes they are very appropriate, and sometimes not. Serotonin, for example, it causes contractions in the intestinal muscle. Consequently, apologies for the details, there is an anti-constipation drug that is based on serotonin. And then, these drugs have a small side effect. They improve memory.
In addition, there is an opinion that an excess amount of serotonin in the brain leads to a decrease in the sensitivity of serotonin receptors. Also, after a person ceases using the drug, it will take a rather long time for the receptors to be restored. While taking 5-HTP, it's possible for you to actually experience a temporary improvement in your mood. But the question arises, how will 5-HTP work in the long term?
The body is such a unique creation, a divine creation. Everything that it needs, it will take. Everything that it deems unnecessary, it will throw away. It will remove it from itself by any means. Therefore, yes, we can take a large amount of the supplement 5-HTP. But what the body considers as unrequired will not be absorbed and excreted from the system. And what is considered necessary, on the other hand, will naturally be assimilated. The question of whether a person will feel the effect of taking this supplement. This is already the second question. Receptors are, let's say, somewhat similar to locks. And serotonin itself plays the role of a key that enters this lock. Suppose that we inserted it into a lock. Then the key broke there, game over. The lock does not work. And the same applies and happens to us. For one reason or another, this receptor does not work, it has turned off, and this means that serotonin will not be perceived. There will be no effects from it. Therefore, no matter how much we eat these supplements, 5-HTP, there will be no sense to them.
An overview of the possibilities to safely restore the level of serotonin in the body cannot be complete without the aid of another drug. This is serotonin adiponate.
Adiponate is none other than the manufacture of adipic acid. This is the compound that allows serotonin to remain in the body for a very long time. And most importantly, not to lose its properties. A serotonin patch has already been developed. It will allow you to stick it on your body calmly, no one will see it. And the most important part, it will release the necessary quantity of serotonin gradually at a regular pace. Preventative measures can be carried out, both in the form of patches and in the form of tablets. Also, sometimes, in the form of injections, in the form of drips. There is nothing wrong with that. The question is, what is more convenient to the person himself? After all, some people are afraid of injections. This is common. Some do not want to swallow pills. By all means, you can use our patches. Or, on the contrary, it is easier for some people to take a pill in the morning and go to work all day, calmly. They don't need to stick anything to their skin. The fact is, serotonin adiponate has proven itself, and the reason is that this compound is quite stable in water. And, as a result, its properties are close to the normal, natural neurotransmitter, serotonin, which, of course, we all give the nickname, the hormone of joy, and, due to its similarity, this allows serotonin adiponate to be widely used in clinical practice. There are already a large number of examples which testify to this. For instance, there were patients who had been experiencing certain problems with their intestines. They began taking serotonin adiponate, and the obtained effect was practically instantaneous. Their intestines began to work. Consequently, their quality of life naturally increased.
Despite the phenomenal results obtained in the laboratories of the USSR, this template was undeservedly forgotten.
Experiments associated with serotonin have been conducted, right? So, a group of patients was selected. Practically none of them were able to stay alive, and they were all treated with serotonin. Out of the 10 people who were supposed to pass away, 9 of the patients underwent a full recovery and were completely healthy. With regards to the 10th case, you see, firstly, the patient was over the age of 80. And secondly, they were already in a grave condition. In light of these results, serotonin has shown the possibility to solve the problems posed by COVID. Well, let's take a simple example here, with you. Who actually enjoys being in hospital? Nobody does. And, automatically, whenever a person goes to hospital, they are worried, they are scared. This fear is unsettling, it alarms them. If we approach this in a gentle manner, by introducing a little serotonin, we will correct their emotional state. And in this way, the person will prepare for being discharged from hospital. Thus, the patient will strive for a cure. And this means that they will undergo a rapid recovery. Therefore, for any person admitted to hospital, its benefits practically speak for themselves. In small dosages or in courses, it does not matter, but it will help the patient to recover. In addition to this, it also normalizes the work of blood vessels. Furthermore, it is also involved in the blood coagulation system, especially in coagulation pathology. When there is increased bleeding, serotonin is simply irreplaceable. As a result, the spectrum for application of this drug is wide. It can be administered both in preparation for a surgery, in postoperative treatment, and it can simply be given to help a patient recover in hospital. Serotonin can be applied everywhere. Serotonin is artificially introduced into the human body. Its main function is to restore the working capacity of the cardiovascular system. This refers to the work, as they say, of the smooth muscles. It is these smooth muscles that ensure a supply of oxygen in the lungs and to blood vessels. However, this is a lack of oxygen in the lungs. Therefore, when you have an injection and other such treatments, you sharply activate the work of the lungs. Basically, the body begins to receive more oxygen naturally. Due to the fact this process is taking place naturally, within several sessions, you have completely restored the operative function of the lungs.
Cutting-edge research has identified the optimal regimen in which serotonin can be used without risk, both as a preventative measure and as a method of treatment. Serotonin adiponate is a highly purified, certified medical product. It has already proven its effectiveness in patients, including those who are recovering from the COVID-19 virus. And what is important, not only is this drug not addictive, it actually reboots your serotonin system.
With the case of serotonin adiponate, patients don't experience the syndrome of withdrawal. Therefore, after we take the drug, having used it, yes, we obtain the effects. And then under these effects, we continue functioning for a prolonged period. Therefore, if necessary, this can be repeated. And, basically, it won't manifest as an addiction. Because of this, when people ask questions such as, what will happen? How will I go through withdrawal? Won't that be an addiction? But won't I get hooked on the needle? We answer, no, you will not get hooked, there won't be any addiction.
The ability to use serotonin as a preventative means has opened up a whole spectrum of possibilities in the beauty industry. Now, thanks to these applications, you no longer need to have youth injections and injure your body. All for the sake of prolonging beauty.
What exactly can determine the age of a woman immediately? There are 3 things in total. These are gait, posture, and voice. If their posture is straight, if the person is cheerful, if their shoulders are spread out, they walk and glow with happiness. Of course, their eyes shine. The skin receives a sufficient amount of blood. It is rosy, smooth, and moist to the touch. Naturally, all of these factors, they don't only create the appearance we see, but they also make this appearance a reality. And the reality is a happy, inspired, cheerful person. This is a person who is ready to move mountains. In addition to the systemic effects of serotonin, meaning on the whole body, serotonin also possesses a local, regulatory effect. In particular, serotonin affects the microcirculation of skin vessels. As I said earlier, the skin is a peripheral organ, which gets everything according to the residual principle. If something is wrong with the vascular tone, or, due to stress, the vessels are all spasmodic, naturally, blood flow will be poor. In addition, the cells won't receive enough oxygen. They will experience hypoxia and, as a result of this, progressively age. Naturally, there exist such things as applicational forms of serotonin. This implies serotonin that we can apply to ourselves in a variety of ways. For instance, we can apply serotonin to our skin in the form of a mask, patches, or plasters. These products are infused with serotonin in a special form. If patients use these items, it will help their skin become rosy, healthy, radiant, and smooth. Therefore, by applying a serotonin patch, for example, we can help the skin to look fresher and younger. We can help avoid the necessity for any serious procedures which involve the use of injections. This is because there are side effects to such procedures. And so, these patches can aid in rejuvenating the skin, so that it always looks fantastic.
When we were created through evolution, or when we were fashioned by the Creator, neither of them foresaw a separate organ in our body, one that has the ability to generate energy. In each cell, there are these so-called batteries, better yet, accumulators. And these accumulators are charged every night. And every day, they provide energy to ensure the existence of each cell, each organ, and for the body in general. So, what are these accumulators called? These are mitochondria. Serotonin. This substance is another opportunity, which helps our mitochondria to produce more energy. And this opportunity can be utilized at any age.
It may come as a surprise, but the prerequisites for such a revolution in medicine and healthcare appeared more than 30 years ago. Back then, the experiments conducted had already left scientists dumbfounded. However, it's only today that we have arrived at a point where these achievements are accessible.
Well, it was simply staggering to see. We endeavored, and in fact, the most difficult cases were undertaken. For instance, when a person's heart had stopped beating. Can you imagine that? A second, another, a third, and so on. The heartbeat had stopped, and at that moment, it was injected with serotonin. In just a few seconds, electropulsation had completely restored. Serotonin adiponate. This form of drug possessed tremendous potential. In other words, you are actually prolonging your life by 15 to 25 years. Let's say, you are 70 years old. You experience problems with a deficiency of serotonin in the body. Now you have gone through the whole cycle. You are guaranteed to live another 15 to 20 years. Located on planet Earth, there exist these special zones, which we refer to as blue zones. These blue zones represent locations where people live seriously longer than the average population. In fact, they live even longer than the rest of the population in the country where they are located. The following zones are Sardinia, in the south of Italy. In Sardinia, men, without a shadow of a doubt, live longer lives than all other men in Italy. Another so-called blue zone is Okinawa Island, in Japan. On Okinawa Island, women live clearly longer lives than all other women in Japan. So, on Okinawa Island, women who live longer have a very amazing life principle which they abide by. Every morning, when these women wake up, they wake up because they have a reason which drives them to do so. In other words, a reason for you to wake up in the morning and one which will wake you up, so that we can live another day in our lives. And, strange as it may seem, this reason is not connected with yourself personally. This reason is connected with other people who surround you. Self-realization. I suppose this is what we all aspire to achieve in our lives, be it on a conscious or unconscious level. However, it is my steadfast belief that when people achieve this state of self-realization, it results in them living longer. And they live the maximum amount of time, which has been allotted to them on this planet.
Every one of us is capable of choosing how to prolong our youth. Some choose a healthy lifestyle, proper nutrition, and a positive attitude. Some require additional help, in the form of biologically active food supplements and medication. And some understand that they cannot get by without the help of specialists. And it works. Both together and separately. The medicine of the future is already opening up new opportunities to us as humans. And the new code to youth is serotonin. It is an additional source of energy, a boost to our health, and ensures a good mood. And research into the properties of serotonin does not stop. Not even for a minute.